All right, mate, nice one. Well, do you want to just kick us off by explaining to everyone who you are, what you do, and we can go from there?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, obviously, name is Callum. Also go by the name The Phonejacker. So right now, yeah, I've been on a bit of a journey for the last 2 years, but right now, I provide sales training, primarily to those that are self-employed on a one-to-one basis, but also in-house training. But specifically for what is probably the hardest task for salespeople, and that's cold calling. So yeah, I've been doing that, the training side of things, for about just under 6 months, I think now. But yeah, that's what I do in a little snippet.
Yeah, awesome. So it'd be really interesting to understand like your journey up until this point of like actually getting into sales and getting into sales training. So like, if you could take us back, well, as far as you want to take us back, really, and then yeah, just sort
Yeah.
of walk us through your journey up until present day.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so look, I initially I did a marketing degree. We'll go far as back as that.
Yeah, go on.
I'm 34. Yeah, 34 in a few weeks, so we're going back a while now. But yeah, I did a marketing degree, and that was kind of the plan, was to get into advertising, or the advertising space. I was attracted to the flashy lights and the colors and all the branding and all that kind of stuff. That was the initial plan. And then basically when I was at university, I went to Nottingham. There was a placement year, kind of a gap year where you do work, right, for a year. And I was really fortunate, where I ended up getting a job at Microsoft. So I went there for a year, worked in their advertising team, and yeah, went back and finished my degree. That job had literally nothing to do with my degree at all. It was project management. So everything I learned on my marketing course, very little applied in the real world when I did that job. So I did that, and then they offered me a job when I graduated. So I just went straight back into it, and I hated it. And it was a lot of hard work, long hours. I got paid well for a graduate, so that wasn't an issue. And then I remember after a while, I really disliked my job, and I thought, this isn't the future that I want. So I need to do something different. And my boss at the time, he was really helpful, and I was having chats with him. He's like, "What do you want to do?" And he set up a couple of conversations with some senior people at Microsoft. So I had one chat with a sales director, and another chat with it was a CMO for one of the divisions within Microsoft. I think it was Xbox. So anyway, I had a couple of chats with them, and I was like, right, what do I want to do? And I remember one day, it was a Friday afternoon, and I never got to finish early on a Friday. I'd always be there till 5, 6 o'clock. And I remember watching in the door 3 or 4 salespeople, and they were leaving at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I thought, where the hell are they going? So I was chatting to them, and they were like, yeah, we're going on a client lunch. And I thought, you know what, this sales gig seems like a lot of fun, and sounds easy, right? It's finishing early and going off for lunch. And genuinely, that was the kind of catalyst for me to get into sales. And so there was a job opening that came up within the sales team at Microsoft, and I just applied for it. And there was a lot of overlap with the work that I was doing at the time. And yeah, they just gave me a job, and I went straight into sales from that. So yeah, I didn't take kind of the traditional route. I didn't fall into it. I just made a stupid decision, more based on the fact I didn't want to do what I was doing at the time. And sales seemed like an easy kind of out, so to speak. And yeah, how wrong was I? So yeah, I did that. That's how I got into sales. And then I did that role for maybe like 18 months. And then I decided I did quite well out of it. I was very fortunate. I had people selling my product for me. So it wasn't a traditional sales role in terms of I had to go out and find my own business and kind of do the whole cycle from prospecting to close. I had people selling my product for me, which was good. And I did a little bit of selling on the side. And yeah, I did really well out of it. I had my best commission ever. Never managed to hit those heights again. And then, yeah, I went traveling for the best part of a year, actually, when I was about 26, 27. So yeah, I did that, went traveling, and then I came back, and then I was like, right, I've got to get a job again. I'm broke. And I made a decision that I'd worked for a big corporate and it was good fun, but obviously you get a lot of office politics, probably as bad as I think it can get at a big corporate. Sorry, Microsoft, if you're listening.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought, right, I'm going to get into a startup. I want to get a proper sales job, although I didn't really get that, but I'll come on to that. And I was like, right, I'll join a startup, something that's fairly new, and it will be good experience for me to kind of have like no brand to work with, or have leverage to get meetings and all the rest of it. So yeah, I did that. I went to a company, and I had a relative amount of success, but I was only there for 9 months because I don't know if you remember GDPR that came in,
Yeah.
and that had a big impact on the business, and they closed down their international office. They're a US company, so yeah, I got made redundant after 9 months. And then I had a couple more jobs that didn't really work out, which was my own fault, picking the wrong company. But it was difficult, right? I got made redundant and I had a month to find a job. So I had to just get whatever I could and then try and figure things out. So yeah, I made 2 mistakes working for shit companies. And then finally, before I became self-employed, I worked for a company that was in the advertising space, or the marketing space, where I was selling basically digital marketing services to online sports books and casinos. So you've probably seen those betting ads where they're like, deposit £10, get 100, and all of that. That was basically me for a couple of years, although I didn't sell much. And so yeah, I did that, and then it got to a point which kind of brings me on to where I am now in my kind of journey and my career, where I was really struggling, and COVID hit. I remember that. And obviously I was selling into sports books and casinos, and a lot of that was live sports betting, right? And for about 4 or 5 months, the whole sporting calendar was put on hold. And so, yeah, whatever, I wasn't doing very well at the time anyway. I really struggled. But whatever clients I did have, I lost quite a few of them. And I really struggled to find new business. A lot of these sports books and casinos were looking internally because they were trying to navigate this world themselves, right, and see where they could kind of grow revenue, or what opportunities were still left if there was no live sport. And so, yeah, I really struggled. And it was that point where I was like, right, I need to get some help. So I did that, and I worked with a fella who, you know, Benjamin Dennehy. I worked with him for about 10 months. And yeah, he taught me pretty much everything that I know to do with prospecting and the world of sales. So yeah, I worked with him for about 10 months, and then it got to a point where I had a conversation with him, one of my one-to-ones, and I basically said to him, I was like, look, I've quit my job. And he just laughed at me, and yeah, he looked at me and just laughed. He's like, that's some of the best news I've heard all year. I didn't really understand what he was getting at, but I basically quit my job because all of the stuff that he taught me, that I was trying to put into practice and get better at and develop, I basically kind of hit a wall with the company that I was in. One of the reasons was there weren't that many sports books and casinos. There aren't that many in the UK. I was targeting Europe, mainly Europe-based businesses, but there was a team of us, so we had countries that were split up. So I probably had like less than 50 that I could prospect. So cold calling wasn't really that fruitful, and obviously a lot of them are shady companies, so you couldn't call up the office. They had like some sort of I don't know what you would call it, like a shell company or office location. Yeah, literally, because obviously loads of people lose loads of money through their sites and sports books and all the rest of it. They don't want people turning up at their office, like threatening them and all the rest of it. Like, they legitimately do ruin lives. Well, maybe they don't, but they provide the environment for people to ruin their own lives, right? So yeah, it was really difficult to kind of progress. And so, yeah, I got to a point where I was like, if I really want to get good at this, I can't stay here and do that. It's just not the right company for me. And I had some issues with management who were great with me, but at the same time didn't really buy into everything that Benjamin taught me. Because I'm
In
sure,
what
as you
sense?
know,
Like
maybe some of you
what
listeners,
specifically?
a lot of the stuff that he teaches is very left field, right? And it goes against the grain. Literally, like I would say 80% of what I do now and what he taught me is the literal opposite of what every other salesperson does.
Mm.
And so, yeah, when you're trying to sell that into your manager as, right, this is basically everything you taught me, and yeah, everything that you do in your sales process, I'm going to do the complete opposite. Didn't really go down that well. And also a challenge for a lot of salespeople if they're looking to get kind of support from people like me or Benjamin is that if you decide to do that on your own, and I did that from my own money and I invested my own time, right? You're basically giving a middle finger to your boss, right? And just saying that I don't trust you to train me and help me and all the rest of it. And so obviously there was a little bit of that kind of was underlying. And obviously they just want to see results as well, and it takes time to get good at it and all the rest of it. And so I had quite a bit of success in terms of cold calling, booking meetings, and getting new clients. I did start to turn it around, nowhere near enough to kind of warrant me staying there. And to be fair, the company were good in the sense that they didn't sack me, because they could have done that multiple times, right? I was there for I struggled for the last year of it. I was there for a couple of years. So yeah, I had a 3-month notice period, and I was like, right, I'm just going to quit my job and figure something out, because that seemed like the right thing to do. And yeah, back to this conversation with Benjamin, he laughed at me and said, oh, this is some of the best news I've heard all year. It was early in the year, so it wasn't probably the best news he heard all year in the end. So I think it was like February, March. But yeah, we had a laugh and joke about it.
News you heard.
Yeah. He'd had a shit year that year. And so, yeah, we had a conversation, and he was just like, well, in my head, my thoughts was that I was going to find a company that was going to allow me to have the freedom to sell how I wanted to sell. And we had a conversation, and he basically just said, look, all the problems that you've been experiencing with this company, you're probably going to find the same experience working with most other companies. And also he said, you're going to really struggle, because whilst you lack real world experience, like I knew the theory really well. And he's like, you're going to go into an interview and you're going to know more about sales in theory, not in practice, than the person that's hiring you. And no one wants to hire someone that's like better than them, right? In that sense, again, I'm going back to the theory, not the real world experience. So he's like, you're going to find it really difficult, even if you do manage to get a job. So he's like, you've only got one option, and that's to go out on your own. And if your motivation or your goal is to kind of master everything, then that's the best alternative to getting a job. And so, yeah, with that, it was an easy decision. I deliberated it for like 24 hours. It's like, right, yeah, I'm going to go do this, go out on my own. And then, yeah, that was when the Phonejacker was born. And I set up basically a lead generation business. It was just me, self-employed. And I worked with clients who wanted me to get them in front of the prospects that they wanted to meet with. And yeah, I did that for 18 months. And then I was like, right, I've had enough of this. I'll teach people how to do it instead. So yeah, we got there in the end. That's basically my career, my journey. And yeah, how I got to where I am today.
So when you set up your lead gen agency then, so how did you find, because obviously you obviously had sales training, you know, and I probably went for a similar journey to you, mate, because I had some very mixed training the first couple of years of my sales journey. A lot of it I don't use anymore. But how did you find, obviously working with Ben and then learning all this sort of alternative or new age modern advice, whatever you want to call it? How was it going and setting up your own lead gen agency and like actually implementing the theory? Like, what was it a bumpy ride, or did you find it all just like click straight away?
Oh, was it a bumpy ride? Yeah, it was a bumpy ride, but I had enough experience on the phone because I'd practiced loads, and like I said, I started to book meetings towards the end of my employment. And yeah, like I said, I practiced loads, and I just found ways of speaking to people on the phone. And yeah, of like the 50 leads that like actual leads that I had and could contact, I managed to book quite a few meetings through them using the phone. So it wasn't in terms of going out and doing it on my own. Was I as prepared as I could be? Probably not. Definitely not, actually. There will be loads of people out there that have got, at the time, had more experience prospecting on the phone than I did, and like the idea of going out on their own, but were too scared to do it. Yeah, that's definitely a reality. But yeah, I did that. Basically, what I did and how I started it out was Benjamin gave me a little bit of direction in terms of where to focus. And all I did was I built a list of, I think, about 300 companies and 3 different industries. One was marketing. I can't actually remember the other 2. I think one was IT and something else. And basically, I just, in my head, I was like, right, I'll get one client from each industry. Because obviously, if you're cold calling or prospecting for a company, you can't really prospect for a competitor, right? Because you're not gonna help yourself, because you're gonna need to be speaking to the same people. It's like, right, how do you decide which one? So I needed to get companies and clients from different industries. I was really fortunate in 2 senses. One, my first client was a referral through Benjamin. And yeah, we set it up that way. So that was my first client. And then I was really fortunate in that the first 2 meetings that I booked, both of them became clients. And so, yeah, I didn't really struggle in that respect in terms of having to book loads of meetings and fail and all the rest of it. I was really fortunate in that sense. But I also say fortunate. I think that's also a testament to how well the phone works as a channel to book new meetings, because half of the sale is there, right? And also another thing is that if you're prospecting on the phone to find companies or clients that you're going to prospect for, it's like a blind interview, right? Because they're going to see exactly how I'm going to speak to their prospects. And also, if I can book a meeting with them, then in their mind, they're thinking he can book meetings for me, right? So it's sort of a blind interview in that respect. Obviously, one that they don't expect until you phone them up. But yeah, it's a testament to cold calling, and why it's something that I like hang my hat on, so to speak, is because half of the sale is done there, right? All I'm trying to do is find companies that are struggling to get in front of new clients, and they want to grow the business. Then it's just a case of, if I can find them, then they're already qualified for me. Then it's just a case of getting on a call and figuring out what does this look like in their world? What's the strategy? How am I going to help them? What does that look like? And then just the intricacies of data and prospects and all of the rest of it. And so it was, like I said, it wasn't easy. It was a lot of hard work. But I was fortunate for those 2 reasons in getting a referral as my first client, and then both the 2 meetings that I booked, both of them became clients. And then after that, I was really, I don't want to say fortunate again, because you kind of make your own luck. But I can't remember. My first client was maybe around September. And at the time, I just focused on cold calling, and then, yeah, managed to get these clients on board. And then I was started to post on LinkedIn to basically start marketing, essentially, and try and, yeah, get some inbound leads further down the line, so I didn't have to cold call and find them. And yeah, I struggled for about 3 months, where I put loads of content out there. It was all shit. And obviously didn't get much traction as a result. And I remember Benjamin, again, massive influence and help him getting to this point in so many different respects. But I had a chat with him, and I was like, I'm really struggling with this LinkedIn thing. Like, yeah, have you got any advice? What should I be doing differently? And he was just like, you just got to start posting videos of you cold calling. And you'll get a lot of traction. And I was like, yeah, why the fuck didn't I think of that? And so literally, this was around Christmas time. So after 3 months of posting, not every day, but most days, yeah, I started in December, I started recording videos of my calls, and then I started posting them in January. And then it literally took a month before I started getting inbound leads, and I was posting maybe two,
Were
3
you,
videos a week of me cold calling.
but
You're
with the
gone?
videos, are you
Yeah.
posting them natively on LinkedIn? Like the
Yeah.
video was just straight up to LinkedIn, or was it like YouTube and then linked to LinkedIn?
No, it was all native.
Okay.
Initially, it was just like, because cold calls could be quite long. It was just clips.
Yeah.
So it'd be like minutes, like a minute or a minute and a half long clip of a conversation, just loads of different scenarios. And yeah, it just really took off. And the only reason it took off was because just no one else was doing it. And so I just stood out like a sore thumb. And obviously you kind of practice what you preach by doing it. And that was the interesting thing, was like going back to your initial question in terms of getting new clients. I really didn't have to prospect that much for my prospecting business, which is ironic, I know, because like I said, I got a referral from my first client. My next two clients, I literally booked 2 meetings and got them both on board. And then yeah, from February, after a month of posting cold call videos, I had more inbound leads coming in that I could even deal with. Like, obviously, because I only had a set amount of time, so I could work with 2-3 clients at a time. And so, yeah, I literally had not a waiting list, but I just had a list of people that got in touch. So anytime I needed to find a new client for whatever reason, I'd just call them up. And yeah, I just had these warm leads, so to speak. Waiting there, and yeah, I just called them up until someone booked a meeting, and yeah, just got a new client that way. So yeah, whenever I was really fortunate, whenever a client, something went wrong, perhaps it didn't work out, or a client decided to stop working with me, I just had like so many, like tens of companies that I could just call up, and most of them were still looking for someone to come in and do it, because it's not a very nice job, right? So obviously there are loads of lead gen agencies, and a lot of email. I'm sure you get loads in your inbox. I do. But yeah, there's just not that many people at the time putting content out there in terms of cold calls, and marketing their business, their lead gen business that way. So
Yeah.
I was really fortunate, and it worked out. It worked out really well, given I had no fucking idea what I was doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny, man. It's funny, like you said, you're prospecting business, but you're not having to prospect to get business, which is an awesome place to put yourself in.
Yeah.
But I suppose the argument is, like, all this stemmed from the fact that you did seek out training yourself, so you actually invested in yourself. You obviously created a really good contact in Ben Dennehy. Obviously he's exploded as well, and and then obviously, you must have presented yourself well in the sense that he's actually recommended you, sorted you out a client. But again, it's your work, because you're obviously a good student or whatever, picking things up. And then it was something I was going to ask you actually later on in the call about, like, the importance of personal branding, because it's like in 2023, I feel like everyone should be building a personal brand to some extent if they're running a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what you've basically done there is you've got 2 ways to build credibility, in the sense that you're prospecting people while at the same time showcasing your prospecting ability on the cold call to them. So it's like, well, hang on a minute, I've got hold of you, so if I did this for you, I could do it. If I could get hold of you, I could do it for you. Which is an interesting one. But you're also like putting yourself out there, showing, building credibility with your audience by actually showing that you're actually doing the job. Like, Jack and Zach, we have a meeting, had them on the podcast a few weeks ago, and I love their cold calling live streams. It just induces anxiety watching it. Like, I can't imagine how it feels for them, especially as they've got like their client on the call as well, who's like sat there waiting. I saw one with Jack actually. So the client's like there, and then Jack's on there, and there was a couple other people on it, and he actually messed up the call, which I found really interesting. But the way he took it, like in front of the client, he's almost got them a meeting, but he just sort of rolled with the punches. Call sort of like fizzled out, put the phone down, and he was like, yeah, mess that one up. Oh well, on to the next one. And that little bit I found so interesting, because what's the number one reason people don't want to do cold calls? Well, they're scared of rejection, right? They're shit scared of like someone saying no to them, having a go at them, whatever. So how do you deal with, and how do you teach, like, how to deal with that mindset aspect and the rejection aspect, dealing with rejection? How do you go about that?
Okay, there's quite a bit to unpack there. There's two parts to it because you mentioned that most people fear cold calling because of rejection. There is a part of that. Let me answer that bit first, right? People, if there is a fear of rejection, this comes from and it stems from, like he said, mindset, but more so beliefs, right? And every company that I've ever worked with, from the top down, and this is from the CEO all the way down to sales director, there is always this belief that people can, and like salespeople should and or can and should sell to everyone. And the reason I think that is there's this I don't know what you would call it. There is a word for it when like an internal bias when you think you're really amazing and great. I can't remember. It's like something complex, right?
Like a
Maybe
god
you can help me
complex,
out there.
like
But
a it's not, no, it's Messiah complex. Messiah complex.
yes, that's the word. That's it. Thank you. So yeah, that happens in every single company, right? Because however the company was founded, the founders, the CEO, whatever, managing director, they think that the thing that they've invented is the product or service they've come up with is the best thing since sliced bread, right? And
Yeah.
they're so invested in the company that there's this belief that they can and should sell to everyone because they think their product and service is that good that if they get in front of anyone, then they'll just kind of wow and dazzle them into buying from them. But we know that that's just not the case. And so when you have that kind of belief system and that mindset in companies, and that's kind of fed down to salespeople, they fear rejection because they're attached to the outcome, right? So if it's cold calling or if it's email or whatever prospecting technique, they're attached to the outcome because they believe there's no reason why that person shouldn't want to meet with them. And so if you're on a cold call, it's the hardest because you literally hear and feel rejection. But yeah, if someone says to you, no, I don't want to meet, or I'm not interested, or we've got this covered, we've got a supplier already. If you're attached to the outcome, every time you hear no, it's like a little jab in the ribs, right? And the more you do of that, the bigger that kind of pain gets in your ribs until it's like unbearable. So that's the reason why people fear rejection, right? And when I'm on my cold calls, I'm not attached to the outcome. All I'm attached to is the process that I use on my calls. So all I care about is where am I in my process and have I executed it exactly how I want to or should execute it. And if I make a mistake, then that's on me, right? It's not the prospect's fault. It's no one else's fault. I'll take the lesson and I'll move forward and try and make sure that it doesn't happen again. Which I always make mistakes, by the way. Like every day, if I'm on the phone, I'm gonna make at least one or two mistakes. Like hopefully not that catastrophic, and sometimes they can be recovered. But it's hard. Like cold calling, conversation after conversation, it's hard to focus and it's not the most pleasant of jobs anyway, right? So you're going to make mistakes anyway. But that's how I kind of deal with the rejection piece, right? No one can reject me as a salesperson. They can only reject what I'm talking about. So as long as I'm talking about the right things, and if they tell me no, I don't have these problems, then fine, I'll do my best on that call to disqualify them out. And if I've done a good enough job, fine. I'll either figure out whether that's likely to change in the future or whether it makes sense to call them back at another time. And I'll just move on to the next one. So I'm just attached to doing a good job and following my process and doing that well. That's all I care about. The rest will fall into place afterwards. But yeah, going back to the other thing around fear of cold calling, there's two parts to this. There's fear and anxiety, right? These are two different emotions. And the fear piece comes from an internal belief system, right? So you've probably heard of expressions like chip off the old block and the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And another one that Benjamin taught me was, I think it's ancient Greek, show me the child age 7 and I'll show you the man. Basically, they all mean the same thing, right? We as individuals, we are very similar to our parents, right? And the reason that happens is I don't know if you know this yourself, but from between the ages of 0 and 7, all right, we're babies. We've been put on this planet. We've got no prior experience of how to exist, right? How to interact in society with other people, how to survive, how to just function as a human being, and just think about all of the rules and things that we've learned throughout our childhood, right? Manners being a really obvious one. And so, yeah, from the ages of 0 to 7, because we've got no prior experience of how to operate on this planet, we need to learn from someone. So our brain is in a different state. So it's in a state of theta, which is also the same. Like when you just go nod off to sleep, there's a period of like maybe 45 minutes to an hour where your brain is in a state of theta. And it's also the same state when you get hypnotized.
Did you say fate?
And yeah, the reason that, yeah, theta, THETA. It's like the brain waves, the brain signals that we give off. That's about as complex as I can understand it or articulate it. But yeah, the purpose of it is, and this is a kind of the link to hypnosis, is that when our brain is in a state of theta, we're literally just downloading our environment. And so, like I said, if we've got no prior experience of how to exist and how to operate on this planet, then we need to learn from somewhere. So between the age of 0 and 7, and you've heard people say that kids' brain are like a sponge. That is exactly why, right? We're literally observing everything around us from our environment, but also we observe those that are closest to us, which typically is going to be our parents, right? And so we basically take a lot of beliefs and behaviors and all of the things that they basically operate from. We kind of download those and we take them into adult life. And some of them are good, right? So like I said, manners are really good. Please and thank you are really good for us to kind of get by in society. But there are also some things that we were taught as kids that are great when we're a child, but they just don't serve us very well in adult life. So these are the ones that have an impact on sales. The first one is that we were told not to speak to strangers, right? You obviously heard that growing up as a child. Don't speak to strangers. It's obviously really good as a child, right? It keeps us away from potential harmful people, but it's not very good in adult life. How are you meant to make new friends? How are you meant to find a new partner? And how are you meant to find new business if you work in sales, right? Every prospect is a stranger at some point. And so, yeah, it just doesn't serve us very well. And then there's some more. Don't interrupt busy people. I'm sure many people listening have experienced that. Perhaps you went to your mum, dad, when they're in the middle of something, reading the newspaper, watching TV, and you ask for pocket money. And they said, don't interrupt me, I'm busy. And the more you hear that, the more negative reinforcement you get, right? And you're like, right, okay, don't interrupt busy people, otherwise you get told off. And there are a couple of more. If you were really young and you're just learning the language, and people that have got young kids in their life, we're often asked loads of questions, right? What's that? What color's this? What do you call that? All of these things, right? And throughout our childhood, when we're learning that language, that programmed into us, right? We've got to answer questions, but also we've got to get the right answer, because if you give the wrong answer, you're encouraged to give the right one, right? And so the more and more you experience those scenarios, those beliefs are embedded into your belief system, into your brain, right? And so when it gets to cold calling, and back to your point around fear of cold calling, all of those tapes, that scripted behavior that kind of sits in our brain, comes out into the fore, right? And what is cold calling? It's literally, you've got a list of prospects. You know, most of them are going to be at director level, CEOs, MDs. One, they're all strangers. Two, you know they're busy people because you work with directors and they're rushing around the office. You can never get hold of them. You know they're going to ask you loads of questions. In the back of your mind, you know that you believe you've got to get the right answer. And so that's all these tapes and this scripted behavior that kind of sits with us in our brain. And yeah, at the very thought of cold calling, for a lot of people, all of those tapes come into the fore, and all of the stuff that we got taught growing up was there or designed to protect us, right? And so the brain has been programmed to believe that these tasks and doing those things is going to be harmful. And so that's why we come over with this irrational fear of cold calling, because our brain is telling us that this is a dangerous task to do. And so, yeah, that's the fear part. And obviously I talked about the rejection piece, but also there's fear and there's anxiety. And obviously we know anxiety is caused by a feeling or a lack of control over a specific event, right? We know something's going to happen in the future, but we just don't know what that might be and we can't control it. And so that's also something that salespeople will feel. And typically, like we all know, the best way to overcome anxiety is preparation, right? Is if we can't control something, the best thing we can do is prepare ourselves to be able to control the very thing that we're afraid of. And most salespeople, as we know, are winging it, and they don't have a process. They don't have a structure or a framework. They just pick up the phone and they just say what they want to say. And yeah, if you don't know, if you're not prepared for every potential outcome or possible outcome of a cold call, what questions you're going to ask, how you're going to handle objections, what you're even doing, right? That's another one that salespeople, they don't even know the purpose of prospecting. And so they go into it and they're like, well, my job's just to get a meeting here. So everything they do and all the questions they ask are directed at that. And that's why you get so many pushy salespeople, because they beg and plead for the meeting. Going back to my point around fear of rejection, because they believe that they can and should sell to everyone. So they just call people up and they won't take no for an answer. They'll push for the meeting. And ultimately they'll piss prospects off, which is why cold calling and sales has such a bad name. So yeah, a long-winded answer. There's kind of three parts to it: fear, anxiety, and then the fear of rejection from pretty much all beliefs, and obviously a lack of preparation.
Yeah. And then do you think that, obviously, like, in knowing all that as well really helps, but do you think it just comes with experience and doing it often? Or do you have any like specific techniques or maybe even like processes that you go through every morning to build yourself up, essentially?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question actually, because like cold calling, I've been doing it for God knows how many years now, like 4 years, I think. And to this day, there will be days where I just wake up and I just think I can't be asked to do it. And one of the things that I still have to work on now is, I guess, what you would call affirmation. And it's kind of like what you tell yourself is really important. If I go around, and I do this on my LinkedIn posts, right? I talk about the fact that I cold call pretty much every day, and I teach people how to cold call, but I don't like it. And deep down, I don't like it. I don't know anyone that would, right? It's not the most pleasant task. It's very repetitive. And yeah, there's loads of obviously challenges that come with it. But the affirmation part is you kind of got to learn to love it, because the reason that going back to kind of the story around setting up the Phonejacker, I obviously knew I had loads of success with cold calling, the booking meetings that way. I didn't really understand, not necessarily understand, but I didn't really appreciate how effective cold calling is. But after a while, it got to a point, and even more so now, where it's like, yeah, deep down, I don't like cold calling, but if I want to run my own business and like going into sales training, it's not like I have loads of inbound leads coming in for people to come and train their sales team up. I had to, and I'm still doing it now, I have to pick up the phone and prospect, right? And so, yeah, deep down, you have to kind of make a decision, or I made a decision. It's like, maybe I don't want to do this, but I've got to learn to love it, because if I want to work for myself and enjoy the freedoms and all the rest of it that come with working for yourself, then it's like, I've got to learn to love it, because I'm going to have to do this every day for God knows how long, right? I don't know, like at what point, if I ever get there, where people will come to me and I'll have more inbound business for sales training, in-house stuff anyway, that I won't have to cold call anymore. And so, yeah, it's twofold on that. Is one, you've got to prospect every day. That is paramount, because the minute that you do, like, it takes so much energy, and I want to say muscle memory, but it's kind of for the brain. I guess it is muscle memory in some respects, is that if I take a week off or a couple of weeks off from cold calling for whatever reason, when I come back into it, I'm going to slip into old habits and old ways. So the best way to stop that from happening is to cold call every day, right? So it's much better to cold call for an hour every day than 5 hours on one day, right? And yeah, by doing that, you remove what people would call reluctance, because you know it's not a very nice task, and basically by doing it every day you build a habit. And obviously everyone knows the importance of building habits. James Clear wrote a very popular book, Atomic Habits, right? Same with anything, going to the gym, going for a run. I don't necessarily love doing it, but if you just do it every day, you don't even think about the negative emotion, right? You just go and do it, and it just becomes a habit. So yeah, that's really important, doing it every day. But the second part to it again is the affirmation piece, in the sense of, if you're trying to do something that you don't want to do, you've got to find a way to kind of train your brain to not necessarily love it, but to quieten that noise, that voice in your head that's saying don't do it, or do it later, we can do it tomorrow, all of this stuff. You've got to, that's the hardest part, I think, once you're a seasoned cold caller and you've been doing it for a while, is consistency. And those are the two things that I still work on today. And yeah, have those internal conversations. But then the other thing, kind of to answer your question for people listening, is that it's all preparation, right? The hardest thing is turning up to do it. And so and this, I guess, counts for anything, but cold calling is probably more difficult than a lot of tasks that people do in business. But yeah, preparation is key, because if the hardest thing is turning up, you basically want, the only thing that you need to do is turn up, and then you can get on the phone and start calling. So it's having your list prepared and getting everything set up that way, making sure you've got enough prospects. Sorting your list so you know who to follow up with and all the rest of it. And yeah, so I do that every day, the day before. So I make sure before I finish, that's all set up for tomorrow. So when I do get at my desk in the morning, it's like, right, this is all I got to do is press play, so to speak, right? And we're into it. And I think that's really important, preparation. Like I said, I think that counts for a lot of things, like even going for the gym, right? Getting your gym kit ready and doing all of that. If you can do that and just make it so that the only thing you got to do is put it on and go to the gym, then it's a lot easier, rather than, oh, my kit's in the wash, I need to find everything. It's just an excuse not to do it. And so yeah, the same applies to cold calling for sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important to make things frictionless, but also like you said, doing it every day.
Yep.
I'm a big David Goggins fan, and that sort of crowd, like Joe Rogan, that sort of thing. So I started having cold baths or ice baths in the morning, because I absolutely fucking hate it. And every single time, sometimes I'll be sat there in the bathroom for like 5 minutes, and my brain would just go, no, just have a day off, just have a hot shower instead. You don't need to. No one's going to know. And very occasionally it wins, but it's one of those things where it's like, you always feel better having done it. And it's just like who's that other guy? I listened to this other guy called the Mindset Mentor on Spotify, and he calls it his like inner little bitch, and you just got to like tell that little bitch to shut up, basically, because that's basically all it is. It's just like, it's just your brain going into protection mode from like, how we've been programmed through evolution to stay safe and survive. But no, mate, that was all really interesting. I think one question I absolutely do have to ask. I've got a couple actually that everyone's like definitely gonna want to hear your opinion on, because it's like some of the most common sales questions ever. But first of all, how do you teach getting past a gatekeeper?
Yeah, so how can I make this answer succinct? There's 2 parts, maybe 3 parts to it. The first one is that you can't sound like a salesperson, right? We all know that a gatekeeper's job is to put the right call through and not put the wrong call through. And so we also know that no one wants to get a sales call. So we can't let on that it's a sales call, and we can't sound like a traditional salesperson because it's just not going to work. And so, yeah, you can't do that. The best way to do it is you've got to sound like the person that you're trying to get hold of. You need to sound really important. So if I'm doing it and I'm trying to get hold of a CEO or an MD, I try and sound like them, because I know that if I can get the gatekeeper to believe that I am a CEO or an MD, that I'm an important person. So maybe they should put the call through. And then the other bit is the art of confusion, right? Because every gatekeeper up and down the land, all over the world, probably they've got the same script. Who are you? Where are you calling from? What's the call about? And are they expecting it? And so you're always going to get answered those questions. And the trick is to not answer them. I don't want to say honestly, because I would just bend the truth or use ambiguity of words to my advantage. So like one of the things is they ask me what the call's about. I just say, I've got a note to give them a call. And obviously that implies that the CEO or MD's called me and asked me to call them back. That's what most people would think, but that's not what I mean. But then on the flip side, I literally have a note on my spreadsheet, right? I need to call this person. And so, yeah, there's ambiguity there in the words that I use, but I'm also really direct. I'm to the point. And like I said, I sound like I belong. I'm not flustered. I don't sound like a wimp or a typical salesperson. And yeah, I try not to answer as many questions as possible and flip them back with questions. And really all you want to do is just get the gatekeeper to just be like, I don't even know what this is about or who this person is, but I don't get paid enough to deal with this. So I'll just put it through and let them deal with it. Right. And that's the bit where you kind of play on confusion. And yeah, just kind of get them to submit. Sometimes it's really easy, right? You just say, can you put me through to so-and-so? And they're like, yeah, one sec. And they'll do it. But most of the time you're going to get those 4 questions that I mentioned. So yeah, just don't answer them as much as you can, or don't give too much away. And you've got to sound like you belong, sound important, sound like the person you're trying to get through to. And it will work more often than not. Not always going to get through, but it will work more often than not.
Yeah, I think it was your mentor Ben Dennehy. Actually, I've listened to a podcast recently, and he was talking about like intentional struggle. So he was like, he'll sound like he doesn't really know what he's doing, and
yeah,
like people have a tendency to help people out who are struggling, right? So do you implement that at all, or?
I do, not as much as he does, because I think the story when he was talking to me about it was when he was in recruitment. He was put on the phone, and again, he'll openly acknowledge this, speaking in the public domain. But he just had a way with communicating with people and open up a conversation and kind of being more like a chameleon, right? And adapting to the person that they're speaking to make them, I guess, build rapport, make them like him, so to speak. And yeah, I think he just discovered, just by doing that, by getting on the phone and speaking to people, that if he ever struggled, people would kind of drop their guard and open up. And yeah, I remember him telling me he developed a stutter, but he was doing it day in, day out, that it filtered into his personal life. And so I think he does that less and less. I never developed a stutter. I'll just kind of sound surprised. And one of the other things that kind of plays into it is, like, everyone likes to talk about being the smartest person in the room. And if you acknowledge that at face value, the default position is you need to know all of the answers. Whereas I want to be the smartest person in the room by asking the best questions. And so I'll ask questions even though I know the answer to them. But I'll ask them in a way that just makes it sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. And it could be like, try and give you an example. It could be like the most, if a prospect said to me, like they're working with a specific tool or like a competitor, for example, I'd say, oh, I've never heard of them. What are they like? Or what do they do? And it's kind of the same thing in terms of the thought process behind it. But yeah, I don't stutter. I just sound like I don't know as much as the prospect. And yeah, it works because like you said, people like helping other people, but also kind of back to that Messiah complex. People love to be right. So any scenario where you can kind of elevate people and make them feel smart, then again, they're going to drop their guard because they don't think you're on their level. And it will get them to open up. So yeah, it's a really good kind of strategy to use in just communicating full stop, right? Is play yourself down and elevate other people up.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't realize he actually developed a startup, by the way. That's quite funny.
I think it was worse. I don't know if he still does it. But yeah, I think it was quite bad to begin with. And then he kind of shook it off a little bit. But I know there's some parts to what he still does where he has a start. I just developed one there, I think.
It reminds me of the South Park episode. I don't know if you watch South Park, but Cartman pretends to have Tourette's so he can swear all the time, and then he develops Tourette's as a result of it.
No, I've not seen that one, but no, I love South Park.
Yeah, it's funny, man. It's funny. This is potentially a controversial one, but what's your thoughts on doing research before calls? Like, do you do research before calls on the company? If so, how much? Or do you just need minimum information and you can call anyone?
Yeah, really good question. The short answer is, well, yes, I do research, but I don't do it straight before the call. I guess the idea behind researching is a lot of people have this idea of kind of building rapport with prospects, and they believe that the best way to do that is to find some nugget of information about them as an individual, the company, awards they might have just won, or any information about them in the news, and use that as some way to kind of strike up a conversation with them, and sort of warm them up before they go into like their sales pitch or this cold call or whatever that might look like. The problem with that is that prospects don't give a shit. And if you speak to most prospects, you always see the data. I don't really trust these stats, but I can believe it that most people don't want to deal with salespeople. If there was a solution or a way that they didn't have to do that, then most people would choose not to, just because that experience is so poor for many of the reasons that we talked about today. And so, yeah, whenever you do that, whenever you research that sort of thing and you lead with that, especially on cold calls, I mean, the last thing they want to do is they just want you to get to the point, right? Who are you and why are you calling? So, yeah, whenever you kind of lean into stuff that's got nothing to do with the context of the conversation and the prospect can just smell that you're brown nosing them, it's going to put them off, right? And they just think, fuck, another salesperson. How do I get rid of them? So, yeah, I don't do research in that regard. And even out of kind of that context, like trying to find something about the company in terms of, I don't know, like context, if it was recruitment, trying to find out if they've got any jobs that they're hiring on their website or whatever. I mean, you could do that, but it's probably a poor example. But the only research I do is to figure out should they be on my list to begin with. And so obviously I'll try and figure out what is an ideal customer, what are the criteria, company size, who the best person to speak to. Do I need to speak to an MD, or is there a CFO or a CMO that would be better to speak to, but always at director level? And yeah, maybe there are some other criteria in terms of revenue, company size. That's something that I look at for sales training because I want to train teams and not like one or two salespeople. That is all the research that I do. And the reason why and sort of why you don't need to go very specific, and again, go back to that recruitment example, is that most companies hire people all year round, right? Or they're going to hire someone at least once, unless they're a one person in the year. And so the benefit of calling them up is, even if they're not hiring now, you can find out when they are hiring in the future and call them back at a relevant time. And so you don't need to research their website to find that out. You could probably call them up, and maybe that will be a good way to drop them an email and just say that we've spoken. Here are my contact details if anything changes, and maybe they'll remember you. They might not. And yeah, I'll just do it that way. That's the best form of research, is to speak to your prospects. And You might get loads more information out of them that's more specific than you can get on their website or LinkedIn. And the other reason I wouldn't do research is because I remember earlier today, it was to do with email prospecting, but the question still remains. Someone was on a podcast and it was a clip on LinkedIn. They were saying that they were spending 10 to 20 minutes on every email to personalize it. And obviously we know not most emails, but you don't know whether an email is going to get read first and foremost. And even if it gets through, it might be sat in their junk box. If the email's not very good, it might not even get read. They might just delete it. They can smell it a mile away. So you're spending all this time, and the output or what you've actually sent doesn't even get seen. And it's the same with cold calling. You could do loads of research on the prospect, and then the bastard just never picks up the phone. And it's like, well, was that a good use of your time? The answer is no, right? And so, yeah, that's the pitfalls of it. And I'll go back to that point. This is something that is overlooked with cold calling. And I remember chatting to someone ages ago, a friend of mine, they were in the process of setting up their own business. And they were talking to me about using me to prospect for them. And they were like, before we do it, we want to do loads of market research to figure out whether this is going to work or not. And I asked him, I was like, how much are you going to spend on this? And he's like, well, nothing. We'll do it ourselves. I was like, okay, but how much is that going to cost you? Because your time is valuable, right? What is this going to take away from you being able to do in the business that might be more beneficial? And I was like, well, why don't I just call some people up and speak to them? You tell me what you want to find out, and I'll call them up and I'll get the answers and maybe get some meetings off the back of it. But if I don't, at least I've got loads of market research to understand whether this is going to fit, or even am I speaking to the right people, right sorts of companies? Do you need to try something out? That is often overlooked with cold calling, and it's a great way, like I said, it's a great market research tool. You can just call whoever you want, speak to them, figure out what you need to figure out. Do you need to speak to different companies, different industries, different people? Are you speaking to the right people? All these sorts of things that cold calling can give you the answers to. That's often overlooked.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had another guy on called Will McGee. He's like in the recruitment space, but he talks a lot about like validating your market. And because in recruitment, and it's same with any sales job, I suppose, really, but you need to make sure that there's actually a market there first of all. In recruitment, there's a real big problem with like people start recruiting for a niche, like a certain type of software engineer or whatever, and there's just no demand. But they don't realize, because they haven't done any proper research or haven't like picked up the phone and spoken to their audience. They just sort of waste like 3 or 6 months time, and then realize 6 months down the line, oh shit, actually no one wants to buy this product, so I need to change. Whereas really they could have just even hired like a cold calling agency, a lead gen agency, and say, can you do some research, go speak to these people, see if there's even a need for this first. And it's super important. But with regards to like objection handling as well, by the way, have you got, I know we've only got 10 minutes left of our slot. Do you need to shoot in 10?
No, I'm good.
You good? Yeah,
I've got nothing. Yeah.
Just make sure. The like dealing with objections. So, do you have how do you do that? So, do you just have like a cheat sheet, or is there a particular structure that you have to stick to when dealing with objections? Like, how do you generally go about that?
Yeah, really good topic to cover, because the default position or the consensus in the sales world with objections is they use the word overcome, right? You've got to overcome these objections. And it just implies that literally every objection can be overcome. And that's just not the reality of it, because sometimes objections can be statements of truth, right? It might not be an objection. It might be the actual truth. A good example would be if you're speaking to someone on the phone and they're like, no, I'm happy with my current supplier. They might literally be happy with their current supplier. And there's very little that you're going to be able to say or do on that call specifically that's going to make them change their mind. And so that's the first part. And the second part to it is no objection is the salesperson's to overcome, right? It's not their objection. The prospect brought it up. So knowing those two things, I never want to overcome objections. I want to first understand, is it an objection or is it a statement of truth? Are they telling me the truth? And then the second thing is, I'm not going to deal with this objection. I'm going to flip it back and let the prospect deal with it. So what that might look like is I want to challenge the prospect. So I'll use that example again. If someone says to me, I'm happy with my existing supplier, I'll challenge them and I'll push them away, and I'll try and find out if they're telling the truth. So I'll typically do that by saying, well, when you say you're happy with your existing supplier, you're telling me everything's perfect, right? And by taking it to the extreme, they've got to answer the question, is everything perfect or is it not? And so based on their answer, I'll deal with that, but it will tell me where they kind of sit. Are they actually happy? Are they really, really happy? Or are they just telling me a lie? And then I can deal with it. And then the way that I would flip it back by letting them deal with it, I would say something along the like, if they, let's say they said to me, I asked them that question, are you meant to say everything's perfect or something thereabouts? And they said, well, no, nothing's perfect. I'd ask them, okay, so when you say nothing's perfect, if there was one thing your existing supplier could do that, or could be doing better, what would that be? And then I'd get that answer and then I'd flip it back to them and let them deal with it by saying, okay, so if there was another company or another business out there that could help you fix this problem, you mentioned you're happy with your existing agency, you wouldn't be interested, not even in a conversation, right? And so I'm letting them deal with it. They've told me that they're happy with their existing supplier. I've tried to figure out where they sit. Are they actually happy, or are they really happy, or are they just telling me a lie? And then I'd flip it back to them and let them deal with it, because they're the ones that said they're happy. So if I can find out whether they'd be even open to speaking to another agency first, not working with, just speaking to them, if I can see where they kind of sit with that, then what I would say is I've dealt with that objection, right? I've not overcome it. It's not mine to overcome. They might say, no, there's literally nothing you could say or do on this call that's going to make me want to change agencies. This problem, this one thing that they could be doing better, it'd be a nice to have, but changing agencies, changing suppliers, changing business can be a right pain in the ass. And I don't want to go through that. It's not worth the pain, right? And that's fine. All my job is to uncover the truth on these calls. And so, yeah, I'll deal with the objection. I would never overcome it. So, yeah, those are the two bits to kind of wrap up, is figure out, are they telling you the truth, or is this actually an objection? Are they trying to bat you away? And how are you going to push it back on them to deal with it themselves? Yeah, so that's your answer.
Yeah, awesome. Now, the reason I ask is I actually, when I had the Zach and Jack on, I had a cold call, I think a few days before, and I was calling. I called someone, and basically they were like, "Have you looked at our website or something?" And I think, yeah, it was an interesting reaction. I think the guy was just being a bit of a bellend, to be honest. But Jack and Zach, they were like, "Well, the way we would have done it is flipped it back on them, like you said, and said, well, if I said I have looked at your website, but I wouldn't pass a quiz on it, like, how important would that be to you? Like, why is it important that I've looked at your website?" Which I found really interesting, because I think what most people do is they just they handle the objection with like a set template answer, but that doesn't really solve the problem, because then the prospect just comes back with another objection. And you, like you said, it could be a statement of truth as well, but it could also be a smokescreen, and you're not really actually uncovering anything, right? So it's an interesting approach. Sorry, were you going to say something then?
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple of comments on it. No, you're absolutely right in that. Cold call it, like, sales, just broadly speaking, is simply the science and the art of communication, right? And so cold calling is exactly the same. All we have are words. I know the sales profession and industry loves to kind of hide behind all this great technology and presentations and slides and fancy websites and all the rest of it. But ultimately, all we have are words. That is literally the core of sales. And so the thing with cold calling in a conversation is it's like, and this is just with anyone in the kind of art of communication or the science behind it, is it's conversations are like a game of table tennis, right? Is a conversation first and foremost is two people asking each other questions. When there's only one person asking the questions, that's an interrogation, right? And so you don't want that on the cold call. You don't want to be the only one asking questions, and you don't want them, the prospect, to be the only one asking questions, because that's an interrogation. You don't want that. You want a conversation. And so if you picture a game of table tennis, for the game to continue, you've always got to return the ball. And so, like you said, the scenario with the website, if a mistake that salespeople make is they believe that, going back to the belief systems, right, is you've always got to get the right answer, and they believe that credibility is built from having getting the right answer. But if you, in that context, if you gave an answer around have you looked at their website or whatever that might be, and you don't flip it back with a question, or you don't deal with that in a different way, you just answer it, then you haven't returned the ping pong ball, right? And the conversation, like the prospect wins the point first and foremost, but all the power is still on their side, right? And that's a common thing that happens with cold calling and sales discovery meetings, whatever you want to call it, is that the person asking the questions is the one that's in control, and they have all of the power. And so if all you're doing is answering questions, you're in the palm of your prospect's hands. And so, yeah, back to your point, you've got to always be asking questions. And this is a skill, right? That takes time to develop. And situational awareness, how to ask the right questions without pissing the prospect off. But yeah, you need to do that to kind of remain in control of the conversation, and to not let your prospect kind of dominate you, because again, if you allow the prospect to do that, then you just lose credibility, because they're just going to think, oh, you're just another salesperson. And already we know prospects think very little of salespeople, and so they're going to walk all over you. And the more situations that you put yourself in like that, the less success you're going to have, right? Because do you want to work with someone that's just going to bend over to your will, or do you want to work with someone that's going to challenge you and give you good guidance and advice and ask challenging questions? Because I'd want to be working with that person, right? That's why I'm paying them money to do whatever it is they're doing, because I can't do it myself. And so you want that guidance. And so, yeah, that's a really big thing with cold calling and sales, widely speaking, with discovery meetings and all the rest of it, is this element of control and being able to challenge prospects and stand your ground and have a good conversation and not just be interrogated by them. I think it's really important. So yeah
Awesome, mate. No, it's really, really interesting and good advice. I think just to close this off, mate, it'd be just really interesting for people who are like, just getting started in cold calling and listen to this. If you could just give them like 3 basic tips, what would you tell them?
3 basic tips. The first one is you've got to understand why you're doing it, and I'll give the answer here. It's not a problem. Like we discussed earlier, like most businesses, and the mindset of businesses is that they just got to get in front of people, and they'll wow them and they'll dazzle them with their product, service, all these amazing clients that they've worked with, and their fancy slides and demos and all the rest of it. And that is so far from the truth. And so, understand that first and foremost, you can't and shouldn't be selling to everyone. Your job is really to disqualify prospects. That's a really important thing, because you don't want to be attached to the outcome. You can do a really good job on a cold call, do everything perfect, and still not get the meeting, right? So that's one to do with mindset. The second one is you've got to have some sort of process that you follow and understand why you're doing what you're doing, which I didn't really cover on that last point. But the purpose of prospecting is to find people that are experiencing problems that your product or service can fix, right? That's the purpose of it. And then to get them emotional about it. And the reason why is because what motivates people to buy anything, it firstly is emotion, and then secondly, we kind of justify it with the left side of our brain with some sort of logical thinking, right? And so, the emotion part comes first. So we buy based on emotion. So knowing that, and knowing that also people are far more motivated to move away from pain than they are towards pleasure. Focusing on problems and getting prospects emotional about them problems is the purpose of what you're trying to do, right? So if you can't find someone who's got problems, then find someone that has, right? You're just never going to sell to them, because that's what motivates people to buy. So yeah, you need to understand that, and then have a process. There are loads out there. Just find one that you think is going to work on your calls, and just stick to it and get really good at it. I think a trap that people fall into, especially with the amount of content and idiots like me that add to this, we put out content daily, all these tips, all these different things to do. It can be paralyzing, especially for new people coming into the industry or the job. And so, yeah, find one way of doing things and stick to it. Just get really good at that to begin with. And once you get really good at that, then you can start thinking about all of this other stuff that people are saying and how you might want to integrate that into the way that you're doing things and perhaps improve it. And yeah, that would be number 2. And then the final thing is back to the number one thing that people are going to struggle with is consistency. And so back to the beliefs thing, I think that's the main one, is that you've got to acknowledge all of the things that I talked about in terms of don't interrupt busy people, don't talk to strangers, answering questions, and all the rest of it. You've got to understand and acknowledge that those beliefs aren't yours, right? You pick them up from your parents or through childhood, and unfortunately they stick with us into adult life, and they don't serve us well, right? So firstly, you've got to acknowledge that that's not your fault. You had no choice, you had no control over that happening to you. But the minute you can acknowledge that it's happening, then you can do something about it. But if you don't, then you're just going to make excuses. You're like, oh, this is too hard, I don't want to do it. It's never going to work, and all the rest of it. You've got to kind of get out of your own way in that respect. And then once you've done that, the best thing, the way to change beliefs and turn them around into positive ones, is just to do the thing that you fear the most. So you just got to do it. And the thing that you can do to support it, what I did was is internal dialogue, I guess you would call it, and taking these beliefs, acknowledging that they exist, and replacing them with better ones, right? And you can only do that over time by spending time on yourself to understand what beliefs you've got in your mind, in your head, which ones aren't serving you very well, and what belief you want to replace them with. But you can't just do it once and it happens, right? You have to constantly be doing it. And the combination of that and actually picking up the phone and doing it daily, you'll get over the fear very quickly. And then it's just a case of repetition to kind of build up, I guess, confidence, but just your skill set, right? And just having a conversation with someone is a skill, a very good skill to have. But yeah, it takes time to develop. And as I said, all these things that we kind of learned as a kid growing up, they're just not very good for doing that, which is why people fear doing it so much anyway. So yeah, those are the 3 things that I would suggest. And yeah, the other one, last thing I'd say on it is Benjamin gave me this advice, was you've got to be your own best friend in sales and cold calling, because you're going to take more I guess, beatings, or you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed. And so you've got to accept that that's kind of part of the process. It makes the wins more enjoyable, but if you can accept that that's the norm for everyone, then yeah, you've got to be your own best friend and just be like, look, this is going to be hard. It's going to be rough at times. But this is par for the course sort of thing. Like, accept it. And yeah, try not to be too hard on yourself, because like I said, I still make mistakes to this day. I remember making one this morning that I was really pissed off about. But yeah, it's going to happen. So you've got to be your own best friend. I think that's a really, really important one in what is a very difficult job, and especially cold calling, right? A difficult task to do.
Yeah, that awesome, mate. Loved all that. So yeah, no, thanks so much for coming on, mate. Really, really appreciate it, and I'm sure people will get loads of value out of this. Where can people find you? Where do you want people to go?
Yeah, good question. I'm everywhere now. So yeah, I guess the best place to find me is LinkedIn. Just Callum Beecroft, Beecroft, or The Phonejacker. You can find me that way. And then my website, thephonejacker.co.uk. Those are probably the 2 best places. And yeah, I've got a YouTube channel, just Phonejacker again. And I've recently, on what is now X, again at the Phonejacker. So yeah, any of those channels. But yeah, LinkedIn, best place, or my website. You can find more information about what I do and the training that I provide and all the rest of it.
Yeah, awesome. I'll put all the links in the descriptions and in the clips and everything anyway. But yeah, mate, no, that's awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for the invite. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done a podcast, so no, I really enjoyed that. So yeah, thanks as well.